Good evening from Vietnam. Good afternoon to you, Orell. Thanks a lot for spending your afternoon to join our Inside Sharing, share your stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You've been to our country only 2 days. Now you have a new friend, new family. So next time, you spend more time in Vietnam instead of only 2 days, one in Hanoi, one in Ho Chi Minh City, okay?
I definitely will. I definitely will.
And because you've been to our country already, so it is very honor for our audience to have you to do a little introduction of who you are and the work you are doing. Would you please do that for us?
Of course. So I'm Orell. I'm living here in Germany, southwest of Germany. I've been to other places as well. So in my childhood, I was also in Africa for 3 years. I've spent some time in Scotland, and that was after my medical school. Spent some time in Brazil, Porto Alegre, also part of my medical school, and I'm traveling a lot because after my time in the hospital, I went to the pharmaceutical industry, and obviously this is a global company, so I've been to the US many times, to Japan, Australia, and other places. And besides that, I love traveling, so I've been to many places like Africa. We just been to Namibia last year, where we got married after a long time, after a long relationship. Maybe that's another story for some time. And yes, so that's me. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a neurologist. That's what I'm trained in. And yes, as I said, I left the hospital at some time point, went to pharma industry where I am still now. But besides that, I've realized, after some experiences I made during my life, that there's other things that are interesting for me enough, because my signature strengths are, the love of learning, is curiosity, is also enthusiasm, and therefore I, look into other places where I can do. I did trainings, I did coaching, and finally public speaking, which I enjoy a lot, and looking forward that this also develops further.
Beautiful, beautiful. Around our conversation is designed to know the dreams that you have, that how it's transformed into what you're doing today, and you share your stories in less than 2 minutes. And that's not fair for our audience, okay? So we're gonna travel time. We're gonna understand your dream as a childhood and how the journey of traveling the world and now becoming on stage, sharing your ideas with for other people to listen and apply. So how the idea of traveling time sound to you?
How the traveling was for me? Is that
How
your
does it
question?
sound to you? How interested for you in traveling time with me?
It's very interesting to travel with you, sure.
All right, all right. So, Aurel, when I was little, I grew up in a very poor community, and
Hmm.
one day we had electricity. Then maybe the day after or 2 days after, we didn't have electricity at all. So the only thing that really beautiful at night time for me is when the moon shows up, right? And then we can see the neighborhood, we can see things. So my earliest dream when I was little is was one day I wanted to become an astronaut. So maybe go into the moon and seems to be pretty cool, and I can see things brighter and clearer there. But life did not give me any opportunity to do things that I wanted as a child. So for real, when you were little, what was your dream about the future works, the future things that you are going to, offer to the world?
So actually, my earliest dream that I can think of must be when I was a child. Between my when I was 8 year old, I went to Africa to see my father and his children, which were of course my siblings, and I spent there 3 years. And it was a tough time. On the one hand, it was in Liberia, West Africa, which was before all the civil war and everything. It was in 76, 79. But I think what I learned is that, because I was the oldest of the siblings, and to sort of get a lot of resilience. I think that's what I learned, and I also had to prove myself all the time. So I defined myself. I had to be good at school, bring good grades at home, be the sort of role model that my father wished, his son to be. And maybe he projected a lot of that into me. So I tried to fit that role. And I think later in my life, I thought I had to fulfill that. I had to be a politician or a medical doctor, something like that. Although my actual dream was being an actor.
Oh.
And I did a lot of, theater playing. I enjoyed that to act, because I realized, when we did the summer camps and there were some games, I always enjoyed that. And I didn't know that I was talented or something like that, but I always did well. People applauded, and I liked that. My first experience, actually, I was a teacher, a history teacher and history teacher of German in the school. That was after that. That was when I was like in my teenager years, and he wanted to do a play from Dürrenmatt. It's a Swiss author, and he wanted to do a play of a Roman emperor. It's a very famous play that is usually on theater. And he said, "You are playing the emperor." So I said, "Okay." So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna play the last emperor of the Roman Empire, right?" And this is the story about that play, and it was a big success. And after that, I really wanted to do more. I wanted to do more theater, and actually, but I didn't really have the trust, because I was back in Germany, and I felt, well, just being an actor doesn't pay you the bills, and I didn't have the confidence to go somewhere. I think the paths were much difficult. Although I had a friend who went to the art school in Munich at that time. But I didn't have the confidence. I said, I have to do something proper to study and to make my father proud, to make my mother proud, and therefore I started medical school.
Wow. So your original dream was wanted to become a politician or a medical doctor, right? But the inside of that, you wanted to become an actor. And I'm curious to know, was anybody at home have that gene of artist or something like that influenced you? That Orell, when he was young, he wanted to become an actor in the future.
Actually, I can't remember anything that I learned it from. My mother, she was a podiatrist, and she a medical podiatrist, and she was very proud for me being becoming a doctor. My father, he died early in the 80s. He saw me as a politician. And I did a lot of, in school, I was the head of the class and head of the school, sort of from the pupil point of view. And I liked organizing things. I did the journal of the school, and we organized, events and these things. So I loved organizing things, leading people for one common goal. I just love that energy when everybody is doing, working for one bigger goal. So that was also one part. And I also enjoyed the sciences. I realized I could do that. I could do languages. So I realized maybe I had a lot of talents. Sometimes it's a curse, sometimes it's a blessing, right? But there were so many things I loved to do, and I couldn't really decide. I loved psychology, right? I wanted to be a teacher, like mentoring. So in the end, I thought I really like a strategic plan. When I was like 17 or so, I put in all the job possibilities on a piece of paper with the pros and cons and what is important to me and whatnot, and then decided to enter medical school, because I thought with that I will earn enough. I can do it everywhere I want. I'm not restricted to one place. For example, I can change from hospital to somewhere else if I want, and all these things became true. As I thought, right? So I had some good ideas when I was young, ready to make that decision where to go from, because it enabled me to do what I'm doing now. Maybe in my dream it could have been earlier, but maybe now is the right time, because you need some experience in life to then teach and mentor others.
And isn't it beautiful, starting to see life coming to full circle? Your
Definitely.
dreams you prepare at your teenage now coming. You're on stage. You're an actor now also. But that actor sharing the ideas to help people to get better at living, because Your TED Talk is about silent leadership. It's not only getting better at leadership, but it's getting better at anything for anyone if they can practice that. Okay, so let me bring you back onto that moment when reality hits and you say, okay, Orell, you have bills to pay, you have life, to be responsible for before, moving to a different career that you love to do. So medical doctor it is, right? And how did you feel when you have to put the thing that you love aside for a couple of years and then move into something else that is needed at that moment?
So in my career, as I said, I went to the hospital and I realized I like it, but not so much as I thought. So it was a lot of routine, a lot of documentation, and you couldn't do a lot because when patients come to you in emergency, like with a stroke, I tell that story in the talk, you realize you're at the very end of that development, and the bigger part of that development has already taken place. So there were only a very few moments where I had the impression I could change something, influence, help somebody really. And that frustrated me a lot. So one year when I was in psychiatry, I realized, wow, by talking to people, to someone makes an impact to the better. That was new for me because I was a young doctor and talking to patients didn't really feel that it was, doing a lot of good things, rather than, you have to talk to the patient at some time point. But in psychiatry, it was different. And I realized, oh, wow. And I think I kept that thought because I kept that thought and I really wanted to continue. But again, I didn't have the confidence to stay in psychiatry and become a psychiatrist at that time because, I was called by an agency and they had an offering in more in the pharma business, service providers, CROs, and kind of stuff, and in Berlin, a big town. So I moved there, although I had an offer from the psychiatry clinic to stay there. But that thought was always in my mind, is there something I could do by just being me and already making an impact to people by just talking? Because in neurology, it was not talking that helped the people, in my opinion and perception. It was more I had to do tests, I have to prescribe tablets and infusions and things, and maybe it made a tiny little bit of improvement in those patients. But in psychiatry it was different, but also very serious. People are sick and you can also only do so much harm, so do so much good. Sometimes you have to you maybe do more harm than good depending on where the patient is. So even though I thought, yes, being a psychiatrist is a good thing, I wouldn't have wanted to stay there too long because it's, as I said, it's somehow depressing dealing with mentally sick patients all the time. I very much, look forward or, appreciate people doing that, but I didn't feel that this would be my game for life, just being a psychiatrist. But I like the idea of talking to people and making impact.
Okay. Earlier, you mentioned about the word confident, right? Because you wanted to become an actor, but then you wasn't confident about being an actor, be able to pay the bill or having a life that maybe the desired life you wanted, and same thing for when that idea of thinking to become a psychiatrist, and then you mentioned that confidence was another, once again it rise up. So what happened there for that strong Orell, not being confident? So help us to understand.
I think besides my strength of being enthusiastic, optimistic, I think there's also a big sense of requiring certainty. And you can think about how I grew up. When I was small, and I had my mother had to work, and that time there wasn't babysitting or something like that, so you had to take me to another woman during the week, where where I grew up more in the first years until kindergarten, and then I was 2 years with my mother, and then I went to Africa again. So I never felt, where do I belong, right? Where is my place actually? I then never felt home. Of course, I was looking differently, although that was not. I rather saw it as a benefit. It wasn't. I didn't really see this as a disadvantage. But I think I didn't have the certainty of growing somewhere up, belonging there, belonging to the people. I always had the feeling I come to somewhere else and had to learn new, had to make new friends, had to accommodate myself, get the certainty. And once I had the certainty, of course, then I can flourish more or less. But I think maybe this sort of seeking certainty is like a pattern that accompany my life.
Wow, wow. And like Steve Jobs famously said, right? We cannot connect the dots forward. We can only connect the dots
right
backward. So whatever you did in the past is also, is finding the way to connect back to the dots that you always wanted to do. So that thought of ideas, the idea of, being in the end of the value chain to provide the care, at the end, now you've been in the front to let people know through conversation, through talking, to sharing the ideas that can help them to make a better life for themselves instead of, being preventive at the end like this, or intervene at the end. It's not so. How could you have that thought in mind for that many, many years and still having a curiosity to find ways to pursue it?
Because that's my strength. That's my signature strength. So I'm now doing, I'm learning positive psychology, and I think I always had that in me. I always was optimistic. I was always curious. I wanted to learn new things. But I went, I did a lot of theater, amateur theater. I learned to play musicals. I did all that, not as my main job, but as a sort of side, like a hobby. And it always, like improv, for example, you always have to push yourself. You have to leave that space of certainty and expose yourself and look what happens. And although I like seeking for certainty, I always exposed myself to those new things. I always tried something new, experimented, and I always had something good coming out of it. So yes, that's the two parts of me. I'm on the one hand, seeking for certainty, but always trying something new, learning something new, because that's when I feel alive.
Well, help me to understand this, because I got this question many, many times that the audience asks whether or not they should be specialists. So it means that they spend major of their time on to doing one thing, majority of their time to doing one thing, be so specialized about that area. And why, somebody else, we ask me whether this is not, it's better off to do many things and want to be a generalist. So you seem to be in that specialist and also finding time to, find different aspects of different things to do to strengthen and to expand the horizon and the opportunities for you in advance. So for you personally, which one of the two do you think that is worth for people pursue, and why?
I wouldn't choose the one over the other. I think each one has its advantages. I always admired people who would do one thing, excel at that, make great money, success, whatever it is, right? So I really admired it because I was not like that. I always had many interests, which was sometimes difficult because you can only do so much. And it's still now. I mean, I've realized through my life, it's good to focus on one thing, like I did with public speaking, right? I learned it. I went to the German Speakers Association. I went through the whole process and then realized, it becomes a success if you really focus on one thing. And still I'm doing a lot of things, but I think if you have a lot of these scanner personalities who have a lot of things, I think it's a good thing. Because you learn a lot, you're getting more tolerant. Because if you have open eyes for many things, I've been to Africa, I've been to many countries. We were belonging to the richer part of the population, but we were living in an area which was very poor, and we had friends who were very poor, right? And we also had friends who were the sons of the vice president of the country. So I've seen everything, and this sort of obviously. Had a big impact on my life, and I think this helps. So I would prefer having a lot of interests, but finding something where you really excel and stick to that until you make it to some, mastery. Having one, just like, very few talents and bringing that. If you're that person who excel, okay, we need those specialists who are very good at one thing. We need those people, obviously. Like a doctor who is the absolute specialist in doing heart surgery, but maybe he doesn't have good relationships, and other things are not working well, because we always sometimes always only see that one talent where a person is good at, but we don't see the other things where he might not, or she might not be good at. So I think it's a balance, but for some people they have to go for the big things, and some people they see success in other things. They see success more in having good relationships, in having a nice home and children and gardening, and everything is fine. You just have to follow your calling. What is in you that you want, and go there. Because I always felt I wanted something else. I want this. And I did it, and I experienced it. I think this is more what I would recommend, rather than going the one or the other way. Is, what are your strengths, right? Where are you good at? When you don't know, ask yourself, what in the past have I done where I excelled, where I had fun, where I was in my flow? And this usually leads you to your strengths, and then, embark on them and develop them.
I see. Because I was just about to ask that question, because I've met a lot of people one day that they say, okay, they wanted to do, like IT, and they do it for 2 years, and they got out of that, and they met me again. They said now they want to be in human resources, and and they kept changing, but they really put attention and focus because they thought that is the strength that they do. So for you, where you put your full throttle onto the to the public speaking and on the new venture for that. So what exercise did you do to find that is a true strength, that true something that Orell wants to do, and he wants to pursue with 100 or even 200%?
It was a journey. So it started with my personal burnout, right? Maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, in the company, where we had a lot of success, right? We had a project, lots of money and for the company, and the incentive for me was having more work and having more, employees to lead or to manage, more or less. But I wasn't prepared for that job. So I realized I couldn't do that job well, although all the time I've been doing my job very well. And I realized I just couldn't, and I was getting lethargic. I was getting, almost lazy, and I said, what's going on? Why can't I do that? I mean, I've been and I realized people are leaving the company, and my employees, leaving, and I realized, okay, maybe I need to do something else. And then, I started looking. So I played theater. That's something I did all the time, and I just kept doing that, improv. I did some other, learned to be a coach. I started fitness coaching and fitness school, personal training. I looked into, being, what's it called? For eating disorders and in these things, being a specialist. And then I started music. I started singing, right? I started being an actor on, like in a musical. But it was all great, but I realized that's still not the way I could express myself like I am. And it took until 2020, so 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, when I wanted to do public speaking. I think that's something, because I did a lot of presentations in my company, and people always said, oh, you present that so well, and we feel energized. So I looked into that, and then the pandemic arrived, so I couldn't do those courses. I did them online, and then in September 2020 I started with Toastmasters. And I realized and that was the first time when I started something and I immediately was good at it. Right, with musical playing and music, it was good. I was not bad, but it took a long practicing and training until I had the feeling, it's good enough to be on stage and impress people or inspire people, right? Because singing is really tough if you don't learn from early on. But talking was something else because I could have my creativity and in doing things and writing scripts and so forth. I could have my acting talent with it, and also my desire to talk to people and inspire them, give them an impulse to do something for the better. So all of a sudden I realized I could implement all these things that I had all the time and have the maximum expression of who I am. And early on, so I went to the finals in the first year, and went in the finals the second year. I became third for the whole, district of Germany and two other countries. So with that feedback, I realized, okay, I'm good at that, and I want to do it the right way. So I did a 1-year course, seminar, a curriculum to learn to be professional speaking, which went until 23, and then 23 I became professional speaker, and then started all this process. So not so long ago.
So now you're doing full-time speaking engagement?
Not full-time. No. I'm still employed. So yes, I'm still employed. So it's a challenge. But in 2019, I made like a 6-year or 7-year plan, and I hope none of my colleagues will see this. But of course, I want in 26. I said I want something to change. Maybe I will have my own company. But I didn't know what to do. I only knew I would become a professional speaker. I had like Tony Robbins, these people like role models, and I learned NLP and all these things, what I learned. But I didn't find it yet. And I realized it took some time. And now I think I have the right tools, right? I'm into positive psychology. I'm doing trainings there and seminars and learning. This is the tools that I need in order to help people get better, for employees to get better, for leaders to be better leaders. Because I see that in my company, we're a huge company, how things can go wrong. I see it in my own person, how things went wrong. And we see it in those Gallup reports and, reports of the working space, the missing emotional connection to leaders and what that leads to and what are the consequences. In addition to the pessimistic views many people have. I mean, I don't have to tell you about politics nowadays, how people see things. And I think, so this is the positive psychology in a person, in an organization like a company, but also as a society. I want to stand for optimism. I want to stand for, finding your own strengths and not, blaming all the environment and the system for your well-being or for things that don't go well. Of course, there's always things to criticize, but feeling that you are the one who can have a huge impact if you find your strengths and act accordingly. That's sort of my mission. Having an own academy or having an own sort of institution where I teach that. Maybe I teach others to teach that. That's something I see for the remainder of my life when I maybe leave then my company to embark on fully. And maybe that's in a year, maybe it's in 2 years or in 3 years, I don't know. But it will not be in 10 years, so that's for sure.
And I'm certain about that. If you look back at your teenager time, right? At that teenager time, that young Orell already planned ahead for things that he's gonna be doing in the future, and step by step already mapped it out, and eventually it happened. So whatever you do now with the experience, with the desire, the passion, and the love to spread out the ideas that bring positive psychology, positive thinking onto the life of people, that will ignite the energy every day for you to pursue further. So I'm sure it will happen. All right. Bring me to I want to bring you to the moment that you formed the idea of silent leadership, because there's a lot of principle about leadership, right? But the leadership, the silent leadership, is not something that well spoken, well thought of, or and is important. And but not a lot of leaders can practice that these days and in the future too. So so tell us, why did you come to that idea?
I think, first of all, for my personality, although it doesn't seem like always, I'm more of an introvert. So I enjoy being on my own, being creative, working. I can do that for a very long time. I need the interactions, obviously. I enjoy that too, but not that others, where they gain a lot of energy from interacting. I enjoy that, but I need my own time again. So that's one part where I realized I'm more of the silent guy. And when I ask people for feedback, how do what do you think about me? He's a calm guy, right? Confident, sometimes enthusiastic, but mostly calm. So that was one trait that people assigned to me. Then, being in those companies and seeing leaders, I realized, oh my goodness, they talk so much. Why do they talk so much? They don't listen. Some leaders, they have this urge. I had that too. I have to show myself. I have to be the smartest guy in the room, and I have to talk. And I always find that a little bit annoying. When I went to Japan, and I went there many times, I realized, leaders can be silent. They can be in the room, very silent, and then say something, and then everybody looks, oh, that's something important now. So I realized you don't have to speak a lot. And it's still today, when I hear people talking so much, now I say, maybe, what are you trying to compensate? Why can't you say this thing in one or two sentences? And when I talk too much, I realize I'm not clear in my head. I don't have the thing to say, because it doesn't take a lot of words to say something. During my burnout, it was the same thing. Having calmness helped me, cured me. And then I had some, personal problems and relationships that split up. And the way I solved it was taking a walk in silence. And I did that out of, just by intuitively. And I walked for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And after like 15 minutes, something changed within me. I had a new idea, a relief, that the emotions went out. And so these were the sort of things that I realized there's a lot of power in silence. And because I'm a neurologist, at some time point, I did some research, and then it struck me. I said, what? And I learned about the default mode network, which was just discovered in 1999. And I said, we have a silence network in our brain. So that was, I always love when there's a phenomenon and there's a sort of thing in your head that is responsible for that. And then, because I'm a neurologist, I learned more on that. And I said, yes, silence is actually a power. I mean, we need to be louder sometimes. We need to talk. But I think even now, it's so much louder. There's so much people talking. And there's so much more power in the silence. I was in a seminar, which was a seminar for men. And when we said farewell, we didn't, make a lot of noise. On the contrary, everybody looked the other in the eye for a minute, and then there was a silent gong, and then you turn to another person and look that person into the eye. You're not saying anything, you're just looking that person into the eye. And that is so powerful, much more powerful than saying a lot of words. It's nice to say goodbye, all these things. We did that afterwards with some people, obviously. But in that moment, when you look someone in the eye, you create such a bigger connection, right? And this is something which I wish, even on a broader scale, if you really look someone in the eye for a longer time, all those things that you think separate people from another, in having different cultures, or you feel the connection, because in the end we are humans, right? We are godly creatures, and with looking into the eyes, you feel that, and that, and you don't need to talk, you don't even need to speak the same language. So I see much more power, and I, also finding a metaphor for that. You could say it's about mindfulness or meditation. People have all these words, but I chose silence, for my metaphor, for bringing that into on the stage and into the world.
Wow, wow. One of the things that we been keep seeing is because of so many noises out there. So it's really hard for people to stay silent. They got carried by the noises and make rash decisions that later on they regret of doing. Like the investment they're supposed not to be invested, the conversation they're not supposed to be, like saying things here and there, what already did it because it's too fast already. So you were able to not only come up with the idea about silent leadership, but also you came up with the model, something that can help people to easily remember, and that is a skill not a lot of people being able to have. I think that's making something complex from the idea onto something that can be, take away in a simple way to come home to share and to think is critical. So when you come up with that focus model, all right, was it called focus, right? Okay, how did you visualize something from the concept onto something that practical that people can take home?
So as I understand you, so you mean from that concept,
the formula.
The formula.
Focus. Yeah, the focus formula. Yes.
The focus formula. I see. So when it comes to how can you do that in your daily life, right? Is that the question? What can you practice? What are the hacks?
No, not yet to that question. I'm coming. My question is coming from the silent leadership, the idea. Now, from that idea, you make it a formula so that people can easily to apply in their life. So moving from idea to formula, it requires a lot of visualization, a lot of thinking, a lot of clarity in that process to make it simpler, and that's not easy. So how did you move from the big idea of silent leadership onto something that practical at practical level, like focus formula?
Yeah, it was trying to find an acronym to contextualize the idea. I had many different iterations of that. Focus was one, right? Where you start. I also had like brain, finding those things. It's not so much important of what that acronym is, but to find a concept, right? In order to actually embark on silence. So for me, I had that time. I'm not following it in the moment, because for me it's the question is, I did a lot of research, and I found from neuroscientists, which I found interesting, because I thought I'm probably not the only one who embarked on that. There's a book called Quiet Leadership.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you know that from a very known neuroscientist, and it has many of these concepts that I embarked on, and it's also about making these more listening to someone, encouraging rather than giving a lot in that. I think the concept is actually taking yourself back and not putting yourself in the center of the attention, and especially at the workspace. I think this is something. So when I say quiet leadership, it's about the listening. So today I would speak about listen and look and hear and feel, what the other has to say, but not also only what he says from the content, but what he's trying to, what kind of emotions is behind that, what kinds of values do he represent when saying that. So maybe a little bit more complicated answer to that. But yes, I'm always playing around with different acronyms like focus, like brain, where I put all these things like basis, resilience, and actions and habits, where I try to put that. I'm still not at the end of it. Maybe I'll come up with something new. But yeah, that's just one playground.
I want to become a anthropologist. What is it called? The one that
Anthropologist, yeah.
Anthropologist, yes, of human beings. Because the next question is about why we turn out to be this way. Because I remember that when we look at children, right, when they've been together, they really care for one another. They really pay attention. They really listen. They really empathetic along the way. If one fail, the other one will, come after to take care and ask why. So what happened to our human beings when we grow up and we're becoming so individualism and driven by personal interest more than the interest of the other people ahead of us? So share some insights so that it can help us to reflect, think, and maybe it can help us to change.
Okay, and I say that again. I'm not sure I followed.
Because when we were little, right, it's easy for us to observe the emotions and how other kids around us. We easily to connect with people. We easily to empathize for the feelings of people around us, especially when it's young kids being around together. But when we're growing up, right, we get older and get older. Something along the way, maybe the food we eat, the air we breathe, or whatever that happened along the way, that we become a lot less interest on observing the feelings of other people. That may be the reason why we speak a lot instead of we listen. We talk a lot instead of we watching how people react. So what happened, and how can we prevent it?
That's a big question. So I went through a transformation, and part of that transformation was clearing up my past, where I'm coming from, with my parents and my early experiences. And it was a painful process, but it was a healthy process, because obviously now I'm over it. And many people don't go through that transformation. And many people get stuck in that, victim role, because it's so easy. In addition, when I grew up, we had like 4 billion people on our planet. Now we have 8 billion people on the planet. So it's a huge competition. That's one part. The second part is the ability to compare ourselves has grown immensely. So, we always compare, that person has more than I have. So many people are in that state of defending themselves, defending their property, defending their wealth, defending, I don't want people to come in my country. So they see themselves, they get selfish because they might lose their wealth, they might lose, their style of living. And I realize people, the more richer we get, because in Western countries, people get richer and richer just by comparison, but the gap gets bigger and bigger. What I'm trying to say is, why do people forget to learn that is because they're not free. When you're free internally, when you've clarified all your things in yourself, right, you can listen to others, because now you've went through those stages, and you don't have anything more to lose. When I talked to people, before that, I always felt I had something to lose. I cannot open myself. I am scared, right? I had this anxiety in myself, and I feel that anxiety in a lot of people. And if you have anxiety, you're with yourself. That's something you tell speakers, speakers who have stage fright. they are not open yet because they feel they have something to lose. That's why they are not open. That's why they don't listen. That's why they just deliver a speech. But when you have nothing to lose, no one can harm you, right? No matter what you say, you cannot harm me. But there are people, when you say something, they get angry. They say, you made me angry. No one can make you angry. Only yourself can make you angry. But even saying that can make people angry, right? So you have to be, you have to take care. And I think, being aware that maybe 95% of everything is within you. Yes, there are some things that influence us, but it's mostly in you, makes people free. And then they start listening, because then there's the joy. Okay, I've went through this. Now I'm interested in your development. Where are you currently? What are you trying to tell me? Okay, I hear the content, but I feel other emotions. But, and I see values up there, and they are important for you. And now I understand you completely. I'm not just focusing on those content. And that's the problem with social media. We only see the content. We only see the words. We don't see if the person smiles. We don't know the person's values. We don't know his knowledge. We don't even know his age, or if he's a real human being. And I think this, people only send. They're not willing to get something. So when I embark on a conversation, I say, is there a chance that you could change your opinion? Or are you just trying to, give me your thoughts no matter what and not change? Because then the conversation makes no sense. Because if you're not perceptive to maybe changing something, then why even start? Because we want to learn. I want to learn, right? It may be that I stay to what I believe in. But maybe I'll learn something new. But I think this has become less and less, people being tolerant and being open for new ideas, changing their ideas, changing their beliefs. And it has become more and more. You only see fight. You only see the one party, the other party. The one are against it, the other ones are for something. And if you watch medias and whatever you look at, it's only a or B, but there could be a C. There could be a synthesis of ideas, and that's what I stand for. But in the media, it's obviously not very common.
It starts with us, right? So it starts with us. So one person, like you lead, and another person will lead, and you can create the Academy of Orell Academy. Then we have many people who join force to make that change. You mentioned one word is critically important in this conversation many times, the word think. So my wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve our thinking capabilities. So I want to end the last conversation today with these big questions to hope that our audience will be something for them to think and to reflect and to use. So how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
By reading a lot. And I mean a lot. I think reading has changed most of my thinking. But not only reading, really working on other people's thoughts. How do other people think? Because that's actually what books are, right? I don't read fiction. I read books of other people in my space, about brain, about neuroscience and psychology. And I think this has changed. And then also going into a lot of seminars and trainings and being, in interactions, learning a lot in a very short time has changed my way of thinking and challenged my way of thinking. Right, going through these processes was hard, but I think was necessary to give up some of the beliefs I had. But I think that was the biggest change in my life that changed my thinking. And one of the most important thing is, and it's simple, it's never rocket science, but you are you have your thoughts, and I have my thoughts, and both are fine, right? So leaving the person who he is, I think was one of the first discoveries. You are fine. I don't have to change you. and I can tolerate you no matter what. That's for personal. That's also, and that's something that helps a lot, because if you always think you have to change people, you have to change your environment, that just drains too much energy.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, thanks a lot for this beautiful conversation. I'm looking really forward to sharing that with our global audience, because the people will benefit from removing the fears along the way, so that they can be confident at who they are and be the real desire to be a human, because inside of each of us, we want to be well, we want to do well for other people. And thanks for leading the way. I'm sure there will be many people on this beautiful planet Earth want to, follow and do the same thing like yours. So keep having the strength and lead the way for us, please.
Thank you.
Okay. You have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in Vietnam one day or somewhere.
That's great. Now I remember, you asked me about focused. I remember what that, I had an idea. Now I know what you mean. Those acronyms. That's fine. Now I couldn't get it when you asked me. But now I remember. Anyway.
We will leave it for another conversation, my friend, in the future. Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot. It was nice talking to you. Bye.